Good afternoon, everybody. Jim Risto here, hoping all of you are safe and healthy. We have Joe Higgins, as you can see, hopping on the screen in a moment with you. I just wanted to quick jump in and let everyone know what's happening today. There's so much obviously changing with COVID, the economy, our businesses. We thought it'd be great to bring in somebody, an outside voice, talk a little bit about the economy, where we're going from here. And today we're not just talking to our members. Joe's going to be talking to the entire industry under AVB University. We feel it's part of our role, not just to help our members, but to help the whole industry share knowledge and information. So with that, I'd like to start out by introducing Joe. Many of you know Joe. He's had decades and decades of experience in our industries. On top of that, Joe is a student of the game of economy. And I think many of you have seen him speak, not just at our national conventions, but at our summits as well. And we're fortunate to have Joe today. He'll talk about the 2020 economy and where we go from here. So with that, Joe Higgins, everybody. Oops, just 1 second, Joe. They have to unmute you, sorry. Go ahead, Joe. Just one moment, Joe.
Me to unmute. Is that it?
Have a great talk, Joe.
All right. Well, great. Thank you, guys. And thanks, Jim, for that nice introduction. And good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you all for having me, and thank you for attending my presentation. Today's economy is a presentation on today's economy. Let me begin with a couple of things I want to say before I start, because I think this is really important. I know sometimes this presentation can sound political, especially in today's world. I want to assure you that I'm going to give you numbers, and I don't do politics, and I'm going to let you decide where we're going in the longer term. And you all know, who know me out there, know I always have a goal before I start a presentation. Today, my goals are pretty simple. I want to give you the best information I can, but in a very uncertain world and with lots of variables, and I'll talk about those in particular. I want you today to look at the possibilities as I walk through this thing. I'll point them out to you. I'm going to give you a historical perspective between where we were in 08, 09, the last recession that you all lived through, by the way, and how it's going to compare to this one. And I'm also going to talk about trend lines, and I will point those out as well so you see them. So my goal is hopefully that when you leave this meeting today, you'll have the hope that we can fix what's going on here in America right now with our economy. Okay, let me begin with a metaphor, really a theme that I want to carry throughout my presentation. And that is, hang on a second. That is our economy structurally sound or not? And the analogy I want to use is the Harmon Hotel in Las Vegas, which was not structurally sound. And you may remember, those of you who go there often, they actually tore this hotel down. There, it's on your left. And I want to compare that, and that's going to be representative of the 2008 economy. And I want to compare that to the Willis Tower in Chicago. I think you may know this as the Sears Tower also, 2020 US economy. So back in 2008, was our economy structurally sound? No. We were dealing with massive levels of foreclosures. We had a liquidity crisis in the banks. Mortgage-backed securities had caused a worldwide recession. The stock market, the Dow went from 14,000 to 6,600 on March 9th, 2009. And we had a massive housing implosion where we lost 1 million homes that were being built at that time. Compare that to 2020 and the Willis Tower. That building has stood since 1970. And the only thing that's wrong with it is, outside of it, is the coronavirus. That's the theme that I want you to pick up on as I walk through this economy. But what is our leading economic indicator? Well, it's the coronavirus. Everything that we do today is built around what's going on with this virus. And the warning that I have is that this fall, we could have a second virus, the seasonal flu. So two could be moving around in the economy and in our world just literally just in a few months. But the COVID-19 has created a set of variables and a set of behaviors I want you to see and think about as you understand, as I go through this, how I make these predictions. What are variables that we have to consider? Well, some of these I can't consider. Is there going to be a second wave? Well, we don't know. How about can we afford another stimulus? I still don't know where Congress is at on this second stimulus, like the former CARES Act. Will we have a vaccine, and will it be available before the end of the year? How about effective therapeutics to keep people alive who get sick? Or do we open up the economy? We tried that back in May. It was kind of a disaster, and now we're back to it again. Or do we send kids to school? These are all really great questions. And then will there be massive evictions? Because the forbearance on rents and mortgages could be off right now, depending on what Congress does. So these are all the variables, and there's a dozen more that I could go through. I just don't have time. What about behavioral changes? This virus has changed our habits. It's going to make the recovery that much longer. Let me talk you through some of these. How about dining out in restaurants? 50% of Americans say they will not go into a restaurant. So we're having our meals at home. I know here at home, Lucy and I, we haven't been out to eat in 6 months, and I'm sure many of you are in the same way. Do we go to malls? Most of us don't. How about watching movies on Netflix? We watch a movie almost every night, and I know some people marathon on shows like Seinfeld, things like that. How about going on vacations? If you cancel vacations, or even think about going to the dentist. Nobody wants to do that these days either. And of course, guys, the guys out there that love college football, looks like we're going to have the end of college football, at least this fall anyway. And then the cancellation of in-person conventions. I know that you guys struggled with this, the brand source, and think about it in a political season where we don't have a Democratic or a Republican convention in the year that we're voting. That tells you that everything's up for grabs right now. And last but not least, how many of you guys have watched pro sports recently and seen the fake fans? I think this is pretty amazing. And if anything has changed in terms of our habits, this is an example of it. So I pulled some numbers yesterday. These are as of yesterday. When I talked to Jim Ristow's senior staff about 3 or 4 weeks ago, these numbers that you're seeing on these graphs in front of you were all going straight up. There was no curve that turned down. But look today, tests are down. That's not good news. I don't like that. But look at cases. Cases have dropped about 28%. Hospitalizations have dropped about 4%. And even deaths, while they look like they flattened out, even those are down. So everything is going in the right direction now. And I'm feeling pretty good about this. We just hope that it'll continue and we don't have any more, we'll return back again like we did in the last case. Here's what the Surgeon General said. Can we get control of this virus? These are his words, Jerome Adams. Just as we've seen cases skyrocket, we can turn this thing around in 2 to 3 weeks. And I have a literal case I'm going to show you here, actually 2 of them. If we can get critical mass of people wearing face coverings, participating in at least 6 feet of social distancing, and doing the things we know that are effective. Now, let me show you Arizona, because up until a few weeks ago, Arizona had the highest infection rate in the country. And look at those the orange graph there with the orange bars, the second one from the left. Those numbers were going straight up. It was phenomenal to watch this happen. And then all of a sudden, about 2 weeks after June 17th, after they put a face mask requirement in place in Arizona, the numbers started to drop. Now, I'm not saying that it's about face masks, okay? I don't really know. I'm just saying these are one of the things that we can do. Hospitalizations in Arizona are down, and so are deaths. So that's a very, very strong picture. And I'll just show you New York, because New York, they went through being the epicenter of the virus, and look at where they are today. They're ready to open up and to open schools, probably safely, and that's good news, I think, for all of us in this country. Now, let me tell you how it's affected our behavior. And I want to show you some trend lines here, because there is some good news out there. Hotel occupancy rates now are at 50%. They were at 20% at one point about 3 months ago. So that's good news, and that's a trend line up. Look at air travel, global air travel. Volumes are down 78%. Okay, that's really bad, no doubt. But they were down 90% at the start of this, the whole pandemic. So this is good news, but the trend line is that more people are moving through the TSA lines. That's good overall for us. And then restaurant bookings are down 70%. After we opened, you could see that it moved up right away, then it flattened out. That's what we expect to happen. Probably not a huge rise after a certain level of people go out to the places they want to go, and it'll flatten out after that. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So that's what the virus is doing right now. And I think I'm saying right now that that's a good trend line. Let's move into where the economy is and how all this is being affected. Consumer confidence. Okay, so what is consumer confidence? People always ask me that. The Conference Board does 5,000 phone calls every month, and they ask people on the phone, how are you feeling about the economy and about your financial future? And they give a response, and that response goes on to an index, and the index is just a number. Back in 08-09, you guys lived through this period. Here's your historical perspective. Consumer confidence reached an all-time low of 34.6. We've never seen a number like that on the index. But then fast forward to pre-pandemic, January 2020, not that long ago, it was 131.8. Now, understand that index levels above 100 are a sign of a growing economy. Okay, 131.8. I was on your stage last year in front of the national audience, and I said if the numbers dropped 10 points, if consumer confidence numbers dropped 10 points, we'd be in trouble. If they dropped 20 points, we'd be in recession. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They dropped 46 points down to 85.9. Index levels below 90 indicate a shrinking economy. So this was bad news. But to be honest with you, when I first heard about the pandemic and started watching consumer confidence, I thought this number would be in the 40s or 50s. So that's not bad. But then take a look at this. June and July, it came back. And right now, we're in a stable area. If you're between 90 and 100, that means there's stability in the economy. And right now, we're at 92.6, up 7 points in just the last month. So that's good news overall. Now I'm going to do some projections for you. And again, those of you who have seen me before know that I've usually given you one number because I could do that then. There weren't so many variables. Today I have to give you 3 numbers: baseline, best case, worst case. That's the only way I could do it. Let's take the best case. The best case scenario means that we have no shutdowns and reduced cases, and we're not there right now. That would be 112 consumer confidence with about a 15% probability. Baseline, this is probably what's going to happen. It's probably going to move into that mid-level where it's at now and stay there. That's with a 75% probability. Partial shutdown, cases moderate. And then worst case scenario is a 70% shutdown, which I don't think will happen, and exponential growth, which we're out of now. 72 on the index, free fall possibly, 15% probability, probably not going to happen. Okay, so if we're feeling good in the economy, if we're feeling good about what we're doing, then we spend money. And consumer spending, what you all spend every day, is 73% of gross domestic product. So a really, really important number. Now, hold on to your hats because I'm going to show you a number that you've never seen before. Well, no, that's on the next slide. Sorry. I want to show you this one first. This is 20 years of consumer spending, okay? 1990 to 2019. What you see here is we've only had 2 down years in those 20 years. It's rare that we drop underwater like this, go negative with consumer spending, because with rising wages typically and an increasing population, normally we beat every year. Now follow this graph up to just above the graph and where it says average increase in consumer spending. That's 3.2% since 1948. So I want you to remember this number because it's the next graph that's going to blow you away. The last 4 years have been around 2.6 in terms of growth of consumer spending. Let's take a look at where we're at now. So in one quarter, Q2 of this year, annualized decline was 34.6% in spending. That's really dramatic. And again, a historic number, one we've never seen in a very, very long time since the Great Depression. But there's a reason for that. And it's not all bad news. And you got to understand the next graph I have, because it's about consumer savings. What have our habits done to us? Well, they've kept us out of restaurants. They've kept us out of vacations. We're not spending money today. So where does that money go? What's gone into consumer savings? One part of it. There's another part to this, but one part of it has gone to consumer savings. Let me explain this slide to you. Back in 08, 09, our savings rate was actually a negative number, not a positive number. The last few years, the savings rate has been around 7.5%. That's great. But all of a sudden, in April, it shot up to 33.5%. So you see the corresponding number in consumer spending drop in 34%. And you also see other increases in May and June. So we have a trend line going here. This is good news because it means consumers have money and they can pay it forward into the next cycle, the next quarter, the quarter after that, wherever they start to spend again. But remember that habits can remain. And that's one of my big concerns. But right now we're in really good shape in terms of our savings and the money we have out there. Let me explain this to you one other way. There's also a personal income rise that is unusual as well. Look at this number, 12.1% in the month of April. Really unusual. We don't see that. You can see in prior months, it's been 1/10, 2/10, 5/10, and so on. So why did this happen? And why did we see such a strong rise in consumer savings? Well, here it is right here on this graph. $2.4 trillion in stimulus money going into the economy. Now that gets added to the national debt, but it really makes a difference for our growth in America. Now, take along with 2.4 trillion, another 1.8 trillion from the tax cut we had in 2018, you're talking about $4.2 trillion plus, and I have to add this in, quantitative easing, which is another 2 trillion or so. You're talking about over $6 trillion going into the economy that's going to national debt. But that's impacting personal spending, personal savings, and the the increase that we're having in spending right now. So this is actually good news, and we're waiting for the Congress to come back and give us another number here. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we'll see as we move forward. But what's the good news for all of you? Well, it's retail sales. And your business in particular, all your products are pretty much on this page. Look at where retail sales has been. So in March and April, it dropped about 23%. In April and May, it went up about 25%. So it's about a wash. I'm not going to call that any great shakes, but I'll say the last 2 months is forming a trend line. And I'll tell you the next month whether we get there or not, but we're forming a trend line, and that's good news. So keep that in mind as you look at this next slide then. In the month of June, electronics and appliances were up 37%, and furniture was up 33%. And you can see if you follow it over to the right there, you'll see that how we were down a year ago. Good news in our business, very good news in our business, that we are one of the leaders here in terms of these categories. So there's a reason for that, though. And let's understand that reason. I know your business has been good in most places. I know your margins have been good. I was talking to Mark Pardini the other day. We were talking about this. People are staying home, and they're doing cocooning. They're doing the same thing they did after 9/11. They're watching more TV, more Netflix, more movies, as I had said before. They're cooking more food, so they want better ovens. They want bigger refrigerators. They want better couches and chairs to sit in. So they're spending money in your stores. And so that savings rate you saw is really important, because that money that's left over now can go into buying product that you are selling today. There's one other thing that's going on, but let me do this first. Consumer spending. Okay, this is my forecast for you. Best case, baseline, worst case. Best case scenario. Again, no shutdowns, reduced cases, up 1.2%. Yeah, we can come back from this. That's pretty surprising when you think about it, but it's only 15% probability. Baseline forecast, negative 6.1. That's probably where we're going to come in, 70% probability. And then worst case, you get into depression era numbers, negative 19, almost 20% decline in consumer spending. That would be a disaster, 15% probability. I don't think that's going to happen. Look at consumer credit, though. Here's another great story that we're walking into the next 2 quarters with, and that's consumer credit and how much it's dropped. It drops almost 70% in April. And then it went down significantly in May, and then it popped up in June. We were expecting that. We expected about a 10% increase in June. We got it, and that will continue. As we have credit available, that will continue into the following quarters for you as well. So we're paying it forward, and that's good news in this country and for all of us. Okay, what about unemployment? Well, this is another great number. I love to talk about this kind of stuff when I think about what happened back in 2008, 2009. But let me take you back. Again, your historical perspective, you lived through this, you knew what this was like. Follow that graph over to the right to 2009 and then up to 10%. 10% is the max number of unemployment that we hit in 2009. It was in November that year. And then as we moved down in year over year, it reduced all the way to where it was when the pandemic started. But let me show you this next number. This is interesting how quickly I thought this happened. Follow this graph down to 2008 and 9, and then follow to the right, and you'll see that we lost 5 million jobs in 2009 and 3.5 million in 2008. 8.5 million jobs lost, but it took us 2 years to get there. And for people like me that look at this every day and study this kind of stuff, that was astronomical, really, to have that happen. But then all of a sudden, just to, I guess, make us all feel pretty bad, in April 2020, we lost 20.5 million jobs in 1 month. Of course, we shut down, and there was a reason for that. Unemployment hit 14.7%. That was the highest. That would be the highest unemployment number we've seen since the Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression, the number there was 25%. Call it 24.9, but call it 25. But let's see where we've been. So here it is on the graph. You can see we were at 14.7 in April, 13.3 in May, 11.1 in June, and 10.2 in July. Okay, let me help you understand, I think, this number. Because when you have a 10% unemployment rate, for all of you out there that own your own businesses, all the dealers, all the leaders in Jim's organization, 10% unemployment means that 90% of Americans are working today. And so that's why we have money today to have a savings rate of 33%, to allow people to go into your stores and buy all kinds of product today, to fix up their homes, to do remodeling, to do all the things that they're doing today with money. 10% means 90% employment. And that's the way we need to look at that as we move forward in this pandemic. and in this economy as well. Now, here's some more numbers I want you to see, because I think this tells a further story about retail. Look at this graph and then follow the green lines, and you'll see number one is leisure and hospitality. We expected the 2 million job gain there. That's a lot, a lot of the travel business, the restaurant business, bars, and so on. But look at wholesale and retail trade. We added 807,000 jobs in wholesale and retail. Now, if you follow the number up, I broke that out for you. Follow it up above the graph, June 2020, 740 of those 807,000 jobs were in retail, meaning that people are coming into stores and businesses like yours are hiring and bringing people in to take care of the demand that we have out there right now. So that's good news. That's June. But then look at July. We returned again, retail trade up 258,000 jobs, and that's all retail. So great job out there in terms of where we're going. And I think it bodes well for our future, especially in our industry. Let's look at my forecast. So forecast, here we go. Best case 8.9, 15% probability. That's 3 times higher than we were pre-pandemic. I'll just say it that way. Baseline 10.7. This is where I think we'll come in. So it's very similar to what you had in 2008, 2009. Then worst case, again, depression era numbers, 20% down, 15% probability. Not going to happen unless we really have a big return to the pandemic. But I think we're better now. I think we understand it, and I think we can get over it. Okay, I asked you this question when I started. Is the 2020 economy structurally sound? Are we the Harmon Hotel or are we the Willis Tower? Which one are we? I think you can see right now from the numbers I've been giving you that right now we're looking more like the Willis Tower than we are the Harmon Hotel. So the economy is structurally sound. Let's walk through housing, because I think this is a big one. I think this sector can pull us out of recession. Let me give you some historical perspective again. Back in 2005, 6, and by the time we got to 2007 or so, we were building 1.4 million homes in America. And that number dropped below about 300,000. So we lost 1 million homes during this period. And imagine the impact that had on your business. That was huge. Let me show you foreclosures, because this is also a big one. We were foreclosing somewhere in the area of 900,000 homes a quarter. Okay, 900,000. And we all knew somebody that lost their homes. I knew a number of people. And then you follow that graph down to where we are today. You can see we're in much better shape than we were in 08, 09. But here's what happened in June, okay? And again, this is one of those kind of numbers I love to talk about. Sales of new homes increased 13.7%. And it appeared as though when the virus first came out that home sales were going to go into the tank, and they did not. You can see the increase we had from April all the way to June. That was really good news. But the better news than this, and I got to say, because when I was at Whirlpool running U.S. sales, I had the builder side and dealt with a lot of builders, and I still talk to some of those guys. I had them tell me recently that they're feeling very confident. They think that the next few months, the next quarter, even next year is going to be very strong, because we have a limited supply of homes out there right now. But the big thing that they're talking about, or that I'm talking about, I think for this presentation, is the NAHB and what they said about builder confidence. Because not only were they telling me that on the phone, but we're seeing it here in the indexes that we're getting. It's doubled. You can see that it's doubled since April, and they're feeling really good right now. And there's a reason for that. And why is that? Another number, if you haven't been looking for a mortgage recently, that you're not going to believe. But right now, and I took this out just this week, 2.88 30-year fixed mortgage rate, unbelievable interest rate levels. And this is what's driving a lot of the business that they're seeing out there. If you're in the market for a loan, this is a good time to do it. Now, I have to tell you this story. I gave this presentation, I told you earlier, to Jim Ristow's senior management team. And at that point, 4 weeks ago, I told them that the 30-year fixed rate would move down to 2.8 sometime at the end of the year. It's mid-August. It's going to be August 15th pretty soon. It's already moved to 2.88. So crazy, isn't it, when you see it like that? Now, let me give you a little bit more advice. Anybody looking for a mortgage, and I'm looking at it here. United Wholesale Mortgage yesterday had an interest rate of 1.99. I wasn't predicting that until next year. It's out there, and it's on the books, so you can go ahead and look for it if you'd like. What is going on with homes, though? We're seeing a generational shift, and this is really important. Boomers and millennials, okay? We've been talking about this a long time. If you look to the left there, low to mid-price homes are going up in price, mid-priced 2.5%. And that's because millennials are moving up and boomers are moving down. Boomers are leaving their multi-million dollar homes and looking for smaller homes. And so $1 million home prices are declining. The most expensive homes in America are down 21%, with supply up 14%. So that's going on as well. That home on the right there, that home had to be cut $20 million in order to sell it. So that's what's happening with the boomers out there and the millennials. Okay, these are my predictions. Here's what I think is going to happen. We're going to have 1.1 million living units this year. That's the NHB's number. Housing prices will be up 2.5, as I said. Now, we're also saying 3.4% next year and 4.2% the year after that. So we're looking for a very strong housing market as we move forward. 30-year, I'm saying now 2.5 at the end of the year. Don't hold me to that because I've already been wrong twice. 2% at the end of the year. And I don't think it can go below 2%. Banks need that much in it to make money. Just like, dealers need 25%, banks need 2%. And I think that's going to be the bottom, but who knows in this world. I believe that remodeling will be up 7.4%. Lowe's and Home Depot came in a little bit higher than that in their earnings report a few weeks ago. But I think for our business, I think you're going to see 7.4. That's a good number to chase, and you should be looking at that number out there for your business. And we're going to continue with a record supply of homes. So if you own a home, keep a home. I think you'll appreciate it over the next couple of years. Okay, so what happens then in America is that if we're feeling good, if we're spending money, and if we're employed, GDP goes up. Gross domestic product. It's defined as the amount of goods and services we produce in 1 year in America. And keep in mind that in America, we're a 70%, 30%, another 70% of our economy is service-based. Actually, I'll say it's actually larger than that, about 78%. There's other factors. The rest of it is either government or manufacturing. Okay, so GDP is an important number. If GDP is rising, then all boats rise. If GDP is dropping, then all boats drop. And that's the typical way it goes in the American economy. Let me show you this graph. And this slide here. And let me just say this about the virus, because the virus is driving the economy right now. This is the leading economic indicator. And you can see on that face mask, the numbers are down. And what I want to do is reverse those numbers and move them up. And let me say this about the way Americans view things. It's like supply and demand. Think of it like supply and demand. When hospitalizations rise and you believe that you can't get a bed in a hotel, you might die in the backseat of your car. Or when deaths go up radically, like we saw just the last month or so, then we begin to take personal responsibility. We stay home more, we social distance, we wear masks, we do the right things. A lot of what we're talking about here in America is up to us, our own personal responsibility to get that number moving in the right direction. And hopefully we continue the trend that we're on right now, because I think it's very positive. Here's GDP from 2005 all the way till today. And I want to walk you through this graph. Follow it to go down to 2006, and then follow the gray line where it says Great Recession, and follow that up. We had 5 quarters of negative GDP. Rare in America, but that's what defines a recession. 2 successive quarters is a recession. That's what we went through in 08 and 09. You lived through that. Now follow those bars over to the first drop in GDP. That's 2011. That was the polar vortex in the Northeast. It drove GDP negative in that quarter. And then followed over to 2014. That's the next drop in GDP. That was Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast. Again, dropped GDP, not too significantly, but dropped it. We've had 38 of 41 positive quarters in America since 2009, in June 2009. So that tells you where we at. We had a very strong recovery, 10-year recovery, the longest in US history. And I think we all felt pretty good about that. Now, the last 2 quarters, pandemic, obviously, the virus, we saw a 5% drop. These are annualized numbers, a 5% drop in Q1 and a 32.9% drop in Q2. And I know that's a big number, but keep in mind that we saw that in the consumer spending number. Consumer spending was down 34%. This is down 32%. It kind of runs in tandem. But keep in mind, as I said before, we have money in savings. We have availability in credit. That will help us out as we move into the next quarter. And it's my belief that we'll see Q3 come in up about 5% or so, in that range. Again, discounting the variables, okay? Because you got to do that in today's world. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Now, the recovery may take a little bit longer because our trading partners in the world, and we are a global economy, are going through the same thing we're going through. We believe the global economy, this is the numbers from the International Monetary Fund. Global economy will be down about 3% this year, GDP. So that will hinder our ability to recover real rapidly. And then our number one trading partner, and this would also be true of Canada and Mexico, which are also our top trading partners of ours, but the Eurozone is our top trading partner. They were down 5% GDP in the first quarter, like us, but then down 12% in the second quarter. That will also hinder our ability to recover. So people always ask me at the end of these presentations, what kind of recovery will we have? Will it be a V shape, a W shape, or a U shape? Let's take a look. Okay, a V-shaped recovery. You're hearing a lot about this, and that's the V-shaped recovery. 1991 is an example of a V-shaped recovery. It was 2 quarters of negative growth. You can see we've already had that in this one. 7.6% unemployment. You can see we're higher than that. And then GDP then was down 1.5%. We're going to be more than that. This is about 30% probability. That's what I put on it. I don't think it's going to happen. This is a W-shaped recovery. This is what happened in 1980, 1981, all the way into 1982. We had 5 quarters of negative growth. We had 10.8% unemployment. And by the way, that was the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. So we suffered a lot in that one. GDP loss was 6.5%. This would happen if we have another run of the pandemic into October, November, December, along with the seasonal flu. This could happen. I put 15% on it. I can't really count on those numbers. The pandemic, I can't really factor that in. I don't think this is going to happen. I think this is where we're at, and more of a U-shaped recovery. Now, I know this doesn't look like a U-shaped recovery to all of you, but to an economist it does. There are 4 quarters that are negative. Back in 2008, 2009, and you guys all know this because you lived through it, 5 quarters of negative growth, 10% unemployment, and a GDP loss of 9%. That sounds familiar, doesn't it, from what I've just given you in this presentation? 55% probability that we'll have a U-shaped recovery, and we will recover sometime probably in the 4th quarter, maybe in the 1st quarter of next year is my guess as to where we're going. Okay, let me just end with this. Let me ask you again, is our economy strong? Yeah. Is it structurally sound? Yeah. And that's what you need to take away from this presentation. Here's my forecast for GDP. Best case scenario, negative 6.7. I'm not too confident in that. I think it's going to end up here. Baseline forecast, negative 9.4. I think that's where you'll be at the end of the year. And then worst case scenario, again, this gets into depression era, 16%, 15% probability, probably not going to happen. Okay, let me wrap this up. Final word here. And like I said before, our economy is structurally sound. I hope you take that away from here. What we're facing the next couple of years is not as bad as 08, 09. It's not. But the uncertainty, everybody is chilling from my perspective. We could have a second wave. We could have a seasonal flu. All the variables I put out at the very beginning of this presentation, all could happen. Our world can return to normalcy if we take the personal responsibility. It's up to us now. Really is. Just like you saw in Arizona, just like you saw in New York. Look at the economic trend lines. I pointed them out to you. There are positives. Confidence in that mid-range at this point is a good sign. Spending is down, but it's in the savings. So the savings rate was great and looks good, as does credit. And employment at 10%, 90% employment number. Okay, keep that in mind. It's not just unemployment. It's where the employment ends up and who's working and who's not. And then last but not least, the virus trend lines, they're out there today. They're positive, but you can find negatives out there as well. But the possibilities are amazing. Look at what South Korea did. Look at what Taiwan did. Look at what New Zealand did. They had 100 days where there wasn't a new case in New Zealand. Asia as well, New York. It's an amazing run. We'll see what happens. But thank you guys all for having me. I'll just let you know that my website is Q for Q with Joe. You can Google Joe Higgins, public speaker. You can visit me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. My videos, blogs, podcasts are all on my website. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you all. And I'll hopefully talk to you soon again.